Hey, Daily Dosers. My name's Austin Payne. I'm one of the high school pastors on the Vista campus. And today, as we continue our series in judgment, I look back on high school for me. And I remember going to the principal's office and immediately sitting down in the principal's office and kind of feeling this like heat at the core of me and going like, oh no, I've done something wrong. And I still feel that exact same feeling, the same emotion when somebody's judging me or correcting me on something or calling me out on something. And maybe you can relate to sitting in the judgment seat when maybe a spouse or a friend or somebody in your life group or maybe even somebody that you don't really know that well, and they come at you and they're calling you out on something. And I think the question stands when it comes to judgment of what do you do when somebody's judging you? How do you not immediately get defensive or bite their head off or kill the messenger? And I think Scripture does a really good job of saying, hey, here's what to do when somebody's judging you, when they're calling you out on something, when you're sitting in the hot seat. How do you respond well? And Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10 says this: rebuke the wise, and they will love you. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. And Henry Cloud has an awesome video called The Wise Person, the Fool, and the Evil Person. It's well worth your time to just Google that video and watch it. But he says that the distinguishing factor between the wise and the fool, and his video is all based on a study throughout Proverbs, is that when correction is brought to the foolish person and the light is shined upon an issue that they have in their life, the fool will kind of adjust the light. They'll move it away from them and they'll blame the light and they'll go, well, that light's too bright, or they'll just move it or they get it out of their eyes. So the wise person will not adjust the light, but they will adjust themselves and they'll see if there's any truth to the judgment. And I wonder sometimes, even if a judgment is 98 or 99% wrong about you and somebody comes to you and they bring about a false accusation, I wonder if rather than rebuking that person, if I can just seek out that 1% or that 2% and go, is there anything about this statement or about this judgment or about this correction or rebuke that I can take to heart and that I can change about myself? And I love that Scripture says, correct or rebuke the wise person, they'll be wiser still. Right? That no one ever arrives at wisdom. Right? Not even the oldest woman or the oldest man who sits and they got the long beard and the long hair and maybe they're smoking a pipe, and not even that person has arrived at wisdom. They can still become wiser. And I love that the Scripture says if you correct or rebuke a wise person, they soak it in and they become wiser still. They'll love you for it. They'll say, thank you for the correction. And when Scripture says in Matthew chapter 7 that you must remove the plank out of your eye in order to inspect the piece of dust in your brother or your sister's eye, I think too often when we sit in the judgment seat, we point a finger at the plank in our brother or sister's eye and go, well, who are you to say anything to me? Remove that plank first, and then I'll worry about the speck in my eye. And I wonder if we can switch that around to go, sure, that plank might be there. The plank might be in their eye, and it might be extremely obvious to me as I sit in the judgment seat, and I might have every right to even point it out. But what if I could, in wisdom, like Proverbs says, not point out the plank, but be aware of the speck and go, you're right, I do have a speck in my eye, and I need to do something about that. Correct or rebuke the wise person, they'll be wiser still. Instruct the wise, and they'll love you for it. They'll say, thank you for pointing out the speck because I was blind to it. I couldn't see it. And sure, do you have things to work on? Absolutely, but so do I. And I think if we can sit in the hot seat, sit in the judgment seat with a humility to go, I want to work on me, and I can only control me, I can't control you. So sure, I could get on a megaphone, I could cry back at you about the plank in your eye, or I could sit in humility and wisdom and go, thank you for pointing that out in my life, and then change me. Thanks, Daily Dosers. We'll see you tomorrow.